Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren. This month we read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan.
Sue Lynn Tan is the author of Daughter of the Moon Goddess and Heart of the Sun Warrior, a romantic fantasy duology inspired by the legend of Xingyin, the Chinese moon goddess. Her books will be translated into 16 languages, have been nominated for several awards, and are also USA Today and Sunday Times bestsellers. She was born in Malaysia and studied in London and France before moving to Hong Kong with her family. Her love for stories began with a gift from her father, her first compilation of fairy tales from around the world. After devouring every fable she could find in the library, she discovered fantasy books, spending much of her childhood lost in magical worlds. When not writing or reading, she enjoys exploring the hills, lakes, and temples around her home. And you can find Sue Lynn Tan on Instagram at Sue Lynn Tan or on her website, which is SueLynnTan.com. Barbara, do you want to tell us a little bit about this book?
This was originally published on January 11th of 2022. It's considered high fantasy romantasy. That's a thing now, apparently, and coming of age. It is 503 pages, and it currently has a 4.11 on Goodreads, nothing on Barnes & Nobles that I could find, a 4.5 on Amazon, and a 4.6 on Audible. Also, I wasn't sure if it's considered adult or YA, because I was getting mixed signals from like all the websites. So at this point, I don't know. I'm leaving that off. Anywho, as of this podcast recording, it has been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards for Fantasy and Best Debut in 2022 and the Dublin Literary Award in 2022 and won the ALA Alex Award in 2023. So we think it's important for readers to know what, if any, representation is in the books we read. So for this book, all characters are POC characters. There are no LGBTQ characters and no characters with disabilities.
All right. And Lauren, do you want to give us a brief synopsis before we jump into our discussion?
Sure. So it's basically a badass novel about a girl who grows up on the literal moon. She's forced to pretend she is not, in fact, a badass for most of the novel, only to reveal her true badassery later on.
I love that.
Will that suffice, or shall I read the actual back for reference?
I think that suffices. Yeah. I mean, that is a very concise,
short and sweet to the point,
and on brand for our podcast.
It tracks.
I'll read the back of the book just in case people didn't listen to our last episode to get the actual synopsis.
Okay.
Growing up on the moon, Xingyin is accustomed to solitude, unaware that she is being hidden from the feared celestial emperor who exiled her mother for stealing his elixir of immortality. But when Xingyin's magic flares and her existence is discovered, she is forced to flee her home, leaving her mother behind. Alone, powerless, and afraid, she makes her way to the Celestial Kingdom, a land of wonder and secrets. Disguising her identity, she seizes an opportunity to learn alongside the Emperor's son, mastering archery and magic, even as passion flames between her and the prince. To save her mother, Xingyin embarks on a perilous quest, confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. But when the treachery looms and forbidden magic threatens the kingdom, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain in which she is torn between losing all she loves or plunging the realm into chaos. A captivating debut fantasy inspired by the legend of Chang'e, the Chinese moon goddess, in which a young woman's quest to free her mother pits her against the most powerful immortal in the realm. Daughter of the Moon Goddess begins an enchanting romantic duology which weaves ancient Chinese mythology into a sweeping adventure of immortals and magic, where love vies with honor, dreams are fraught with betrayal, and hope emerges triumphant. That was so much more poetic than mine, but I still like mine better.
Agreed.
So, what did you think about Daughter of the Moon Goddess? And remember, no spoilers.
So surprisingly, it took me a bit to really get into this book. I'm so used to having like a massive ensemble cast of characters and fantasies, and so I feel like I was missing that in the beginning for this one, as I really enjoy that aspect of fantasy novels, which is funny because I know a lot of people, like some people don't, but I do. But once I got over that, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The time jumping was a little jarring at times though for me, and then at the beginning the similes was a little much for me, but after I got used to it, I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and then it was just like bam bam bam, couldn't put it down type thing.
So I also really enjoyed this book. I wouldn't say it took me a little while to get into it. I don't think I mind the ensemble versus limited cast as much. But I did enjoy it. I really liked the story. I loved all the characters and the developments that we got. And the time jumping was jarring just because there's no, and I both listened and read, and there's no indication that there's a jump in time. It just happens. And so you've got to try to figure out in your head, like, hold on, are we like 6 months ahead? Are we like years ahead? Because these are celestial beings that live forever. So that was a little bit tricky, but other than that, I really did enjoy the story.
It does mention the time jump, but it's like in passing. She's like, oh, and then the months bled into months and weeks and years.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, okay, like it's very casual. So like if you're, it's not like certain
It's
books where
vague.
they say like 6 months
months
later
later.
on
Right.
the chop, you know, or like they make it very obvious. It's like in passing, her mentioning these months and weeks and years have gone by, and if you're not paying attention or like you're not really zoned in, you're like what? Just what year is it? You know?
That describes
And I
me
mean, I don't
perfectly.
even think that counts though. Like it was a very vague labeling of passing time. Like you said, I prefer when if it's going to be a jump that to have like that thing that says
Yes,
6 months later.
Well,
I'm a
yeah.
slut for timing of things. I like to know, and obviously for this book, it didn't really matter because, like you said, these celestials people are like immortal. They're literally immortal. Like only a few things can kill them, type thing. But time is not the thing that can kill them. So it's
Right.
like
Right.
it's not that big of a deal. But like for someone who likes to keep track of things, it is a big deal for me. So it's something I definitely noticed.
Yeah. Overall, I enjoyed it. The fantasy elements that the author chose, I thought were really cool. The pacing was decent. I didn't feel like it dragged on too much. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the world building. I also found the time jumping to be a little frustrating, but I feel like I have this problem with a lot of audiobooks. And it could just be because that's how my brain works. I don't know. Because I really like past, present. Like, I like novels that, jump back into the past and then we get some insight or those sorts of things. I just, when it's an audiobook, and this is helpful because you guys physically read it, right?
I did. Michael is
I do
so
both.
it's fun. We literally cover all
Yes.
facets. Like I'm pure just book. Michael does both, and you're just pure audio, right?
Yes. So I'm glad, I guess, not glad that you had the same issue, Barbara, but that it wasn't just an audiobook thing because I feel like sometimes my confusion happens because it's just audio, but it's good to know that it wasn't super clear in the physical book either.
Mm-mm.
Because I just find it's harder to keep that stuff straight if you don't have a physical copy. But apparently with this, even if I had a physical copy, I would still struggle with that. So, and again, like Barbara said, I think time is not as relevant in this celestial realm or whatever, but I like to have a chronological timeline of things happening. And so I felt a little disoriented at times when I would maybe get distracted with one of my kids, or I'd be doing the dishes and I missed a couple sentences. I'm like, wait, what is happening now? And I have to
Exactly.
hit the reverse 30 seconds 5 times to figure out what's happening.
Years have passed in the blink of an
Yeah.
eye.
Yes.
I agree with you on that one, Lauren. I definitely, more so, I think, than any audiobook in recent memory, when I was listening, there were multiple occasions where I had to be like, wait, hold on.
Yes.
And tap, like you just said, tap back
Tap
a
back
few,
a few,
a little
wait,
bit.
hang on.
Hold on, what did I miss something? And then it's like I listen back, it's like, no, I didn't. They just didn't say. Cool.
just to keep
cool.
it so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she literally is 13 or 14 at the start of the book, and she's in her 20s, if not a little I would say early 20s at the end of this one.
Yes.
So that's
a big
a lot to cover in those times, so it's like, what is happening?
All right. So like always, we're not going to go into our individual ratings right now. You're going to have to wait for that. But our group score for this one was an 8.416, repeating, out of 10.
Oopsie daisy.
I hate you all.
I did not do a decimal, so I'm the only one that didn't do a decimal.
It's true. It's Barbara. We'll talk about it later.
It's you too, Michael.
Half decimal. If we stick with half point 0.5, it does not make it this messy. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about it later.
If
now
you
is
want
not the time.
rules to be like that, then you need to put set ground rules. Because if not, I'm gonna take an inch in the mile.
Now is not the time. Would you recommend this book? Yes, I would. I think it's a book that is probably easier to recommend than some other fantasy books that we've read. Like I said, like the story is fascinating. The characters are really interesting. I think it's one that you could safely recommend to people outside of the fantasy realm. Like for example, if we pretend that I read this not for a podcast, and it was like, and Lauren wasn't part of it. Lauren is traditionally not a fantasy reader, but I would have recommended this. I think this is one I would recommend to someone like that. I think and turns out you did enjoy the book, but I think it would have been a good recommendation. So yeah, I think that it's really something I'd recommend to pretty much anybody. I can't think of people that I wouldn't recommend it to.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend it. Not maybe universally, like Michael said, but definitely to my friends that read fantasy. And I think, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely got that. I feel like when Barbara was telling us about the book, that the genre was actually high fantasy romantasy. And I think, like, when I think high fantasy, I think like Brandon Sanderson. So I didn't think this was like maybe as high fantasy. I don't know if there's like tiers, but this was maybe like this wasn't like top shelf fantasy. It was like
there's a triage of triage of fantasy, high fantasy.
But either way, I think like my friends that read romantasy, we're talking like what is that?
Fourth Wing is a very big one that blew up.
So that I have friends that really like that fantasy, and I feel like this is probably a little too woo woo for that group.
Mean better. This is
I liked it, but some people that like I don't know, like that type of fantasy would not, I feel like, maybe enjoy the higher fantasy. But I also feel like this isn't like high fan. I don't know. There's got to be tiers or something, because this isn't like Brandon Sanderson fantasy. This is like somewhere in between.
I feel like this is more digestible high fantasy.
Yes, it is much easier. The world building
I mean, it's YA high fantasy.
It's not, but it's not. We don't know if it's YA because like one Barnes and Nobles had it in YA, and then the other one that we went to was literally in the adult fantasy section. And if you Google it, it literally some places say YA and other people say adult. So it's very weird. Like it's in that in between.
I don't know. I felt like it definitely had some high fantasy-esque elements, but I didn't feel like it was as difficult to, I don't know, like not comprehend, but like keep track of or keep up with or whatever as some of the high fantasy we've read.
Right.
I would recommend it to fantasy people.
So yeah, I would as well. The world is super interesting. The powers are amazing. The main character is definitely, I feel like, towing the line of a morally gray-esque character, which I love because I love
a morally gray queen.
I do love me some morally gray characters. I was only confused of, like we already mentioned, whether this is considered YA or not. Like I found conflicting, but to me it doesn't matter. But I know to some people it might. Like, would I recommend this to like a 14-year-old? Probably, maybe not younger than that, but like there's no. Like, it's not Fourth Wing where I believe there's
a couple sex scenes in Fourth Wing.
Sex scenes. Like, there's nothing like that. Romance. It's just like, it's clean romance, like there's making out. That's pretty much about it,
That's highly inappropriate.
But like because it is kind of a war book in the sense like there is fighting, that is pretty, I would say, decently graphic. Not like super graphic and like blood splurting all over the place, but like I would say that's a decent graphic. So it's just kind of, I'm not really sure where it falls, like Lauren was mentioning. For the romantasy aspect of it, I don't think there's a lot of, yes, there is romance, but it's not the central point of the novel, where I feel like, I don't know, I haven't read Fourth Wing, but I feel like that the romance in that book is kind of maybe center stage. This one's not. It's in it, but it's not the main thing for the character.
I think Fourth Wing is slightly more romantasy, like the romance part is a little bit centered, more prominent, right? Yes.
Yeah.
And it definitely
I would still say that I wouldn't call that a romance book though.
No.
Like there's
no,
more
but I mean that's why they've made this genre called romantasy, where it's romance with the fantasy aspect, but it's not your traditional just romance novel.
The difference between, I guess, Fourth Wing and this, or even just like a true romantasy versus this book, is that I feel like romantasy caters to a certain, like people read that and they're looking for like sex and tropes, like spicy and like love story with the romantic or with the fantasy flair. And this
Right.
one is more like fantasy with a romantic
Mhm.
flair.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you just make it like a movie, like Fourth Wing would be R-rated. This would probably be PG-13.
I don't know. Would you?
Because
Because
of
I
the
mean,
violence, probably, yeah.
I was gonna say the violence. You could kind of. I mean,
I don't
technically,
know.
I thought.
I don't know what the rating like criteria are for like gore and violence though.
Yeah, I don't either. Because I mean, honestly, if you think about it, Hunger Games should have been an R-rated movie with the gore and the violence in that book. But here we are. Anyways.
Anyway, for those of you leaving us now, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us, and make sure you're following us on both Facebook and Instagram. At Badass Lit Pod is our handle. We want to hear from you. If you got a book you want us to read on a future episode, let us know. Now, Lauren is going to give us a short preview of what we've got coming up next month. We will be reading The Women by Kristen Hanna.
An intimate portrait of coming of age in a dangerous time and an epic tale of a nation divided. Women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frances Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Each day is a gamble of life and death, hope and betrayal. Friendships run deep and can be shattered in an instant. In war, she meets and becomes one of the lucky, the brave, the broken, and the lost. But war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, and to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. The Women is the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. A novel about deep friendships and bold patriotism, The Women is a richly drawn story with a memorable heroine whose idealism and courage under fire will come to define an era.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Remember, the second part of this episode is going to be an in-depth look at Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So if you do want to read it and you don't want anything spoiled, stop listening now and come back and listen to the rest when you are done. Nom Nom is fresh dog food made by real people who really care. They're purposeful and enthusiastic about giving your dog the best food for them and their health, so they can thrive and be their best. Nom Nom delivers fresh food made with whole ingredients backed by veterinary science. And science tells us that dog health starts in the bowl, so improving their diet is one of the best ways to help them live a long, happy life. All you have to do is order, pour, and serve. Barbara and I have 2 dogs, Luna, a husky, and Quinny, a Shih Tzu mix. Our 2 dogs love the beef mash recipe, but to be honest, I'd say Quinny's favorite is the turkey fare. She drools when that comes out of the fridge. Yes, I know, Luna. I'm going to tell them about that right now. Luna is an extremely picky eater and always has been. She usually takes forever to warm up to new food, but not with Nom Nom. She dove in immediately. Both dogs seemed to have more energy, and Luna's stools were no longer soft. Your dog's health starts in the gut. A better diet means softer coats, more energy, better breath, and smaller, more consistent stools. Your dog can't tell you if they're healthy, but you can tell when their health improves. It's the easiest way to take the guesswork out of feeding your dog the best. Nom Nom meals are pre-portioned for your dog's exact caloric needs. Board-certified vet nutritionists are kind of a big deal, and Nom Nom has 2 on staff that work extensively to ensure everything gets sent out is the very best for your dog's livelihood. So how does Nom Nom work? You tell them about your pup, age, breed, weight, allergies, and protein preferences. Then they tailor a specific amount of individually packaged Nom Nom meals and send them straight to you. Store the meals in the freezer or fridge until it's mealtime. They'll give you specific instructions on how to transition your dog from foods like kibble to always fresh Nom Nom for best results. Watch your dog clean their dishes, dance for dinner, and overall thrive. Ready to make the switch to fresh? Order Nom Nom today. Go to a link in the description of this episode and then use our referral code BADASSLIT. That's BADASSLIT and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. So like always, we're going to start this half of the podcast by determining who wins the Badass Character Award. I think without any of us speaking, it's pretty obvious, but we'll go ahead and go through our nominations anyway. Barbara, who is your nomination?
Mine is obviously Xingyin.
So yeah, I also picked Xingyin. She's really the only, I mean, not the only character in the book, but she's the only like main character. There aren't really,
Well, yeah, it's her point of view.
and she's definitely a badass for lots of reasons. So yeah, she definitely gets my nomination.
I also voted for Xingyin for obvious reasons.
Xingyin, you win! Congratulations, you're the badass character.
Yay!
Speaking of characters, let's talk about some of the core cast of characters before we jump into our main discussion. So the first one is obviously Xingyin. Which one of you would like to discuss our main character?
Sure, I'll jump in. So this book is written first person perspective with hers as she grows up in the moon. From, like Lauren says, she's the daughter of the moon goddess. Literally, the book title. It's
What?
I know, she's a surprise baby. No one knows about her, so she gets dumped out of the moon and then falls into the celestial kingdom where she befriends Li Wei and grows up with him, learning about magic, the history, that kind of stuff, archery. She becomes a badass archery person. She falls in love with him, but can't be with him because he's the prince. Shocker. So then she joins the army and fights a bunch of badass stuff, badass scenes, whatcha, whatcha. And then she kind of starts falling in love with someone else, the captain, Wen Shi, and then we go through that story, and then there's some dragons and the end. I don't want to. I don't want to spoil the whole freaking book.
Today. That no, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
but like
that's
the book actually comes to
yeah.
a conclusive end. Like her whole goal in life was to free her mother because she's imprisoned in the moon and can't leave. And she, at the end of this book, actually does that. Just that. She completes that.
Yep.
And then she gets into some effery before then and meets some really cool bad characters that were really cool. I like the bad characters in this book. It makes you really hate them or like love to love them type thing. So I don't know. That's her. She's brash. She's
a badass.
Yes. She's very flawed. Like she's a bit self-censored at times. She starts. I don't know. She's just. There's a lot of like when you typically think of your stereotypical hero in fantasy novels, that's not her. Like that's not her at all. Like she's very single tracked minded. Like she has a goal and she doesn't care who she's gonna step on kind of to complete that goal, which is not a bad thing. But like she has her flaws and stuff, but she is also very endearing. Like she's kind of like childlike in the sense that like she didn't grow up in the celestial kingdom, so she really doesn't know what's going on there. And but she's I really enjoyed her character.
So let's see. Next character is Li Wei. Li Wei is the prince that Barbara was talking about before. I would say if anybody is like another main character, it's probably him because we get more quote unquote like screen time with him. But he is the prince of the celestial kingdom. He is one of Xinyan's love interests as well. He genuinely, I mean, he seems like a genuinely like nice person, which is not generally what you get in a lot of these books when you talk about the people that are in positions of royalty.
He's like the complete opposite of what you would think, right?
Yeah, he's literally the complete opposite of his dad, the emperor. He meets her in a situation where she doesn't know that he's the prince. She thinks he's just a regular person. He likes the way that she talks to him, essentially, because nobody else in his life has ever like told him how it is, and really like been truthful and given the cold hard truth, we'll say, about different things. And he likes that she talks to him the way that anybody would talk to a regular person, not the flattery and BS that he gets from his position. So yeah, I mean that's Li Wei. He obviously is a badass in his own right. He is a very skilled military person as well, and yeah, that's Li Wei. We'll talk about him a little bit more later, but that's a brief synopsis of him.
I liked Li Wei.
General Xingyin is the general of the Celestial Army. He takes a notice of Xingyin when she starts to become a skilled archer. He's very impressed by her abilities and how quickly she learns how to do those different things as well. And he approaches her at one point and is like, hey, when you're done being the companion to the prince, you should really consider joining the army. You could do some really important things. And that's kind of plants a seed into her mind that leads to the entire part 2 of the book, where she is the badass first archer in his army. But yeah, that is General Xingyin. So now, Lauren, you can talk about Captain Wen Shi.
Wen Shi is the other love interest of Xingyin, and ends up being kind of a bad dude.
Kind of.
A very bad
Kind
dude.
of.
A very
He too is a prince, but for
The demon
the
realm.
demon realm prince.
surprise.
Which
And
sounds very friendly and innocuous. I'm sure it's not
Well,
scary at all.
I feel like we've got the demon realm painted in a bad light because
That's
of the
true.
celestials. So I'm
That's fair.
just gonna say that, you know,
Yeah.
like if you kick me in the corner, I'm gonna go like creepy rat on you type thing too, you know.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I definitely feel like you don't realize who he is, or I guess the dimensions or the depth of his not
Mhm.
his badness until later on. We have a question later that kind of addresses him more. But even in the end, she's still like, "Oh, who do I love?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Really, bitch?" But whatever.
I mean, so he's your bad boy, but she doesn't realize he's a bad. Like he's the captain, like the most celebrated captain in the Celestial Army. And surprise, he's not even I mean, he is a Celestial. He's just not like they got broken off type
He's a
thing. That was
double
a bit
agent.
confusing. But yeah, he's a
Maybe
double agent.
maybe Xingyin just really likes the color red.
Oh, red flags.
Yes. All the red flags.
All the red
So,
flags.
so that's Captain Wenxi, also known as Prince of the Demon Realm.
One of the princes.
One of the second son. Let's see, Barbara, would you like to talk about Shu Xiao?
She's very minor, and I wish we got more of her. But she is the only other friend that Xingyin has outside of Li Wei, because like her and Li Wei were friends before they kind of got into the romantic relationship aspect of their relationship. But yeah, she is a I don't know what her status is in the army, but she's in the army in the Celestial Kingdom, and she's just she's Xingyin's only friend. She's cool. I really like her. I hope we get more of her in the second book. This is what I
Same.
was talking about as for the ensemble cast. Like we get a few instances of her in the book, but it's not like a lot. So it's kind of like so much time has happened, so we're just assuming that they became friends out of stuff. We don't really get to see that, but like she has her back and she's really cool. I love her. I want more of her. That's about it.
All right, so the next character on our list is the moon goddess herself, Chang'e. And she is honestly a pretty minor character in the book because we see her a little bit at the very beginning. We know that she's been, I guess not banished from the celestial realm, but she's imprisoned in her home on the moon, and she's not allowed to leave anymore. And people aren't allowed to visit her. So yeah, it's she lives a pretty rough life. She has made the best of it though with her daughter and their servant, I guess.
I would say
Attendant.
I wouldn't say servant.
I guess maybe servant's not the right whole. But yeah, she's the person that her daughter spends the entire book trying to free. I guess the only thing her mom. It is her mom. The only I guess we could really talk about that with her is that the main character, Xingyin's dad, did a really badass thing and killed some things that were threatening the Celestial Empire. And the Emperor gave him an elixir. They were both mortals. And the Emperor gave her dad the elixir of immortality to become a Celestial. And she, the moon goddess, took it instead to save her daughter that she was pregnant with at the time. And that's why she's in prison, because she was not supposed to be the one that drank the elixir of mortality. But anyway,
that's the whole mythology of the Chinese moon goddess. Like that's the story, and she incorporated this to make this book.
Gotcha.
So if you can Google the moon goddess, Chinese moon goddess mythology, and her story will pop up.
Good to know. I did not know that. So thank you for sharing. Final character, I guess characters, the Emperor and the Empress, the parents of Li Wei. Barbara, do you want to talk about them as a combo?
I mean, do you want me to? They're crappy humans. I don't, or celestials. In their case, I don't like them. They're very sus, especially the Empress. Like she is not a nice human. She's super jealous. She's just awful, and you don't really get too much of the Emperor. You just hear about him until the very end type thing, and then you see him and he's just as bad as his wife, to be honest. You learn some damning evidence about them. He is super sus because he was trying to get the dragons to, I think, rule all of the realms. If you ask me, he wanted to control all
Yeah,
of them.
I
But
think you're right.
luckily, Xingyin foiled his plans and got freaking almost died because of that. Because he's, yeah, no, they're bad people. I think it's funny because like this book doesn't have like a set bad guy. It's just like bad enemies happening and stuff. But we don't have a big bad yet. But I think the big
Yeah.
bad is going to be, if you ask me, I think it's going to be them. And we're supposed to be led to believe that it's the demon kingdom, but like he's the one who banished, he put the rules on he banished the dragons, he put the rules on them, he banished the quote unquote people from the demon realm because of their powers, because they have mind powers, that's their magic. And so I don't know, I think there's sus or something going on with them. That's them, they're awful celestials, if you ask. They're
And
nothing
they
like
are.
Li Wei.
I guess the difference between the two of them is that the emperor is your traditional like bad guy politician. Like he wants power, he wants to be in control. Whereas I think the empress is just like genuinely an evil human being. Like she gave off like evil stepmother from Cinderella vibes.
Yeah,
Like
she does give
she was
evil
just a
stepmother.
bad person, just to be a bad person at times to people. Like I don't know. He
Yeah.
he has his own
I mean, but
set of
if you had
issues,
a
but
husband that was like canoodling with a bunch of other concubines, wouldn't you be a bitch too? I mean, I would be. Like,
well, then
WTF,
quit your
mate.
job as empress. Stop living
It's
the high life.
no, especially if you promise this other lady like, hey, I'm just gonna get married to her, but I promise like she's gonna die off or something bad's gonna happen to her, and then you can be my empress. Like, hello, I would be pissed off too at my husband. I would be a sour bitch to everyone as well. Like, what's his reason for being a dick? None.
No excuse.
So
Exactly.
that's the emperor and the empress, Li Wei's parents. Moving on from there, let's get into our first discussion question. First one is: do you have a favorite world building element? If so, why is it the dragons? Or in the unlikely event that it's not the dragons, what else is it?
So I really enjoyed the whole magic system, honestly. The ability to turn your hearing off, like that Xingyin has, so that she could find peace in like the mind control situation. In general, that would be a game changer. I would turn it off all the time in the car, like so
I
that
don't want to talk to you right now. Turn off.
I joke that like if I had like one of those limousine dividers for like my children where I could like
Mhm.
see them but not like hear their screaming, that would be great. So this would be really useful. Even if I could just turn like one ear off or like turn it down. The mom, that would be a game changer. Anyway, thought that was cool. The dragons were amazing. Also, riding an octopus into battle, like what kind of badassery are we dealing with here? I wasn't sure in that scene whether to laugh or be afraid.
It was both. I'm scared and impressed.
Right.
So I just said I cackled when I read this because I mean, obviously, I love dragons. I'm a dragon whore. But yes, I was excited at their appearance. I was hoping we would get them because, like, in part two, so the book is split into three parts, and like three parts of her life. In part two, like, it's mentioned that the dragons are there, but they only appear in part three. And I was like, yes, dragons more. And I really enjoyed it when we did get to see them. But outside of the dragons, I would have to say the magic system was really cool. It's not super complex, but it's just interesting on how like the checks and balances of how it works. And of course, like it would be so cool to like shoot fire arrows. Like they use like it's like their essence. And
Mm-hmm.
if they use too much of it, bad things can happen, and that's how they lose their or immortality and all this other stuff. But yeah, I thought it was really really cool.
I thought so I agree. I enjoy the magic system. I saw some similarities between this book's magic system and Mistborn's magic system, in the sense that like there are some characters like Xingyan who can control multiple elements, and then there are some that only like can use one, which reminded me of the Mistborn because they can use all of the metals in that universe, and there's some people that can only use one. So there were some similarities there. I also loved the dragons. I thought they were very cool. My favorite part of the book between the three parts was the middle part where we got all like her badass like military adventures where she's like taking down monsters and all sorts of cool stuff. So yeah, my favorite world building element, I guess it would be the magic system. I enjoyed how they used that to kind of to do that, but I really enjoyed the fact that instead of it just being a story about this girl who is an attendant to the emperor or the attendant to the prince, Like she goes out and has her own like big adventure in part 2. That was really cool. Also, I have to say I laughed out loud in part 1 when she's like auditioning to be the attendant and she has to brew tea. I was like, wait, is this that book we read, the Magic Steeped in Poison? But it was just a very brief scene, but it reminded me of that because that was a big part of that book. But yeah, that's where I'm at on that one. I also laughed at this question. Lauren wrote the question for those of you that are listening, and it made all of us, me and Barbara, laugh when we read it because if so, why is it dragons?
I mean, the dragons were cool. Like, I liked how. Anyways, I can go off. Welcome to my TED Talk about dragons.
Right. Then the rest of the podcast, Lauren and I will just mute ourselves and Barbara can talk about dragons. Let's see. Next question is Xingyin refers to her father saving the world as a great honor and a terrible burden. Why? What is the true story of Xingyin's father slaying the sunbirds that threatened to destroy the world? And what role did the Celestials play in this story?
So I'd say because some saw him as a hero, obviously mostly the mortals, because he saved the mortal. It was the mortal realm that was in danger. But it also put a target on his back, aka Empress Bitch looking at you, because these sunbirds were her brothers and sisters, and he murdered them. So the story is that essentially the dumb emperor was too chicken shit of his wife and didn't order them to be stopped, aka didn't order the sunbirds to be stopped before they got it out of hand, and so then made Immortal, aka Xinyan's father, take care of it and gave him like a cool special bow to do, like an ice bow, awesome, to take care of it so he wouldn't incur her wrath. Those two real winners, let me tell you, okay? That's essentially what happened. That's how the Celestials got involved. It was their issue. He let them keep having their thing. Then it turned into a bigger issue. Oh no, mortal, you deal with it. You have the consequences of my wife hating you and your whole bloodline. And I'll just sit here on my little throne and look pretty. That's essentially what happened.
So I just want to point out here, this is the Empress's family that she came from. She's
the Phoenix Kingdom.
She's not an evil woman because her husband is an asshole. She's an evil woman because her whole flippin' family is evil.
Got murdered. Essentially.
Because but they got murdered because they're doing bad stuff. It's not like they're like out like woohoo, we're healing the sick. Oh my god, arrows! Like no, they were doing horrible things. She's a horrible person because her family. Anyway.
Well, okay, it's just, but yes, there's different kingdoms. She's from the Phoenix Kingdom.
I mean, I'd say he's definitely seen as a hero. I think at the end of the day, the Emperor probably also saw him as a hero because that's why he gave him the elixir of immortality. And the Emperor also is a smart enough politician to realize that the sunbirds needed to be put down. Like Barbara said, he's just afraid of his evil wife.
Evil, strong word.
Didn't want to do it. But as far as what role the Celestials play in the story, I don't think it's ever confirmed outright, but it's definitely heavily implied that the Celestials provided Xingyin's father with some super-powered weapons that he didn't have. So I would say that's how the Celestials got involved. I think the Emperor recognized that he couldn't outright like assign someone to go kill his wife's family because of his wife, but I think that he kind of under the table like sent people to provide magic weapons to this mortal so that this mortal was able to kill the sunbirds and do what needed to be done. So that's my interpretation as far as what happened.
Yeah, I feel like I literally put on my notes that I needed Barbara to answer this one because her answer was going to be mic drop worthy. So I don't really have anything to add.
All right. So next question then. How do Li Wei and Xingyin struggle to be themselves with others and have close friends? In what ways are they the perfect study companion for each other? So it's a good question. I think that they, for different reasons, struggle to be themselves. So I think Li Wei is constantly, he's frustrated with not necessarily his position, but I think he doesn't like the way that people treat him because when you're in a position of power and you are, in his case, like a prince, you would constantly feel like no one is really ever being genuine with you. You would constantly wonder, like, do these people like me because of me, or are they just trying to get close with someone who's in a position of power and is one day going to be the emperor? And so because of that, he struggles to find meaningful friendships and meaningful relationships. And I think that's why he and Xingyin, from his perspective, are the perfect study companions and friends because they meet and their relationship begins when she has no idea who he is. And he likes that, and it's implied that he kind of does the Princess Jasmine thing often, where he leaves the his palace or whatever, and goes out into the villages to have these interactions, and even though he's not supposed to, but so I think in that, from his perspective, that's why. I think from Xingyin's perspective, she grew up in a very isolated environment where, like, she didn't have the opportunity to make friends. She had her mother and she had their attendant, and that was it. So I think that also is partly what makes them a good match for both their relationship as friends and study companions and everything, because she doesn't know that. When she meets this, she tells everybody like it is, because she's never had a problem and never had a reason to, like, put a filter on herself and not just say what she thinks. And I think that's what really sparks Li Wei and Xingyin's relationship in the first place, is that he loves that she just tells it like it is. And it's a very refreshing thing for him, because he's so used to people just spewing bullshit that I think that's one of the big things that kicks off their relationship.
Yeah, I feel like Li Wei has to censor himself through his lens of royalty, sort of, and then Xingyin is living her double life, so to speak, trying to kind of hide where she came from. And so they both have these secrets that they're keeping, and for lack of a better term, they ultimately end up trauma bonded.
Li Wei has to act a certain way due to his being the prince, and she's too busy trying not to spill her family background secret and being really hesitant to trust anyone else. And I feel like they kind of bond over that, where they can him be truly himself, her, for the most part, she is herself. Is just, she kind of omitted the fact of who her parents are, but that didn't change. I feel like in their relationship, that didn't change anything about, like, how she acted towards him or who she was or anything like that. It just so happened, like, yes, this is your parents. But I think they just really complement each other well. Like, he's your stereotypical hero-esque kind of character, like, good, treats everyone equally, is rational, and she's kind of like your hot-headed person, is more brash, speaks her mind, doesn't care if she is offending or doesn't care about tradition because she didn't grow up with that.
How does Xingyin feel about their accomplishments while serving as Li Wei's study companion? Do you support Xingyin's decision to join the army and make her own way? And why is it so important for her to control her own choices and her own destiny?
So I feel like I support her army decision, because who am I to tell a woman what she can and can't do? um, but aside from that, I think it was beneficial for her. It allowed her a lot of growth and other things. Obviously, it also had its detriments, but I think as far as control goes, it's important for her to control her own choices, just because so much of childhood is not in control, just in general for everybody, but particularly in her situation, like when with her previous situation. And like, she wants to be able to be independent and not have to rely on or trust other people, because she seems to have some trust issues.
Just slightly. So I feel like she is proud of what she accomplished in her years as Li Wei's study companion. The only thing I would say to that is, I understand that, like, her father is a renowned, like, archer, and that's what we're going for in the book, but, like, that's not how genetics works. Just because your parents are good at anything doesn't mean you're going to be good at that. I mean, look at all these people who are, like, high profile athletes. Like, most often than not, their child doesn't compete with them. And same with, like,
I'm afraid you're incorrect,
if
Barbara.
that were the case for me, like, I would be an amazing math person. Like, both of my parents are amazing at math, and I'm, like, as dumb as rocks when it comes to math. So, like, that's not how that works. So that's a little thing that I had an issue with, was, like, the fact that, like, she is a legit archer, but it may be, I don't know, like, she had an affinity for it because of her father, and then years of practice with as Li Wei's study companion. Maybe she got, like, extra practice where maybe she wouldn't have. I don't know, but that's the only kind of gripe I had with that whole thing about that. And what were you going to say, Michael? Go on.
I was going to say that's just not always correct. Like, if we were to pull up the Los Angeles Lakers roster, we would see that LeBron James and his son Bronny are both playing on the same team in the same sport and are both highly successful.
There are definitely genetic
No idea what you're
components
talking about.
to
Sure.
athleticism and, like, singing. I feel like singers, like their kids don't always like go that path, but for some reason, sometimes like think about like Billy Ray Cyrus and Miley Cyrus. Like I'm not saying they're like top notch singers, but there's like a genetic
I think
component to some
it's
of it, but not all of
I
it.
think it's both, because it's like, obviously if you have a singer in the family, like you grow up with that, so then your
True.
interests are going to go into that. And
True.
same with like playing a sport, like maybe you see your father playing a sport or something, or mother playing a sport, and you're gonna go like, oh, I want to do that too. But I think it's both. Like, you, unfortunately, like if you don't get your dad's height, you're not gonna play basketball. Like, you're just, like you're going to start lower than maybe they did if they're like 7'2" when you're like 5'5". Like, it's just
Yes, yes.
not gonna happen for you.
Like
But
Very
my
true.
anyways,
parents are both muggles, so I couldn't go to Hogwarts. It
exactly.
just
I
happens.
digress. That's just me being silly. But anyways, do I support her decision in joining the army? Yeah, like, I don't think she'd be happy to just wall around the palace without something driving her. Like, she's a very driven character. And I feel like Lee Wei didn't know her very much if he thought she would be okay just being like a little concubine over there in the palace. Like, that's not the kind of person that she was. I'm surprised that he even thought that she'd be like, okay. She she had lives and dreams, and I guess he didn't technically realize that she was trying to save her mom, so that's her bad. But I support her wrongs and her rights, and so here we are. As far as why is important, yeah, I feel she's one of those people who doesn't like feeling indebted to anyone. Like, she wants to accomplish her things in her own merit, and she wants to make a name for herself, and save, like, obviously she didn't tell anyone about her mom, and that was her whole life goal, was to save her mom. So, like, maybe had she, they could have helped her. Maybe he would have been like, oh, I understand, like, let me help you. But like Laura mentioned, like, girl's got trust issues, because the only people she ever hung out with was her mom and their attendant, and then outside of that, like, her mom's like, don't tell anyone, like, this is a huge no. Like, you tend to be like, oh, okay, I probably shouldn't tell anyone about this. I get that.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add on this one. I don't think though that Li Wei, I don't think he expected or thought that she would like want to stick around. I think he knew that she would want to go off and do her own thing. I think he hoped, because he didn't want to lose her. I think he hoped that she would stick around, but I think deep down he knew that she wasn't, like, she's going to do her own thing, because that's he fell for her both in friendship and in romance, because she's someone who doesn't listen to other people and does her own thing and will do whatever she wants. And so yeah, I mean, obviously I do support her decision to join the army. I think her reasoning for joining it was when she figured out that she could win this honor that would allow her to ask the emperor of any favor. She's like, oh, well, that's how I free my mom. Easy enough. I'm going to become a badass archer and go do some cool shit. And so, yes, I do support it. And also because of what Lauren said, like, who am I to say like what she can and can't do? And I think for her, it's very important, like both of you said, to control her own choices, because she's never really had an opportunity to before. And so she's going to lean into that now that she can.
I just like to mention, it's funny where they went to it's the Ocean Kingdom, I like East Ocean Kingdom, I don't remember, Sea Kingdom or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, you're a woman, like, we don't support women, or we don't have women in our
Right.
military. She just scoffs like, you're missing out then, because I thought that was just kind of a funny scene.
It definitely was a funny scene. All right. Did you see Wen Shi's deceit coming, or did the twist surprise you?
So, sort of, I was very sus of him since their first like fight in part 2, where he kind of just disappeared at night for reasons. How he dodged questions about his family and just like wanted to check out the library with no one else there. Like, all of that was very sus. And then she even mentions that at the end. She was like, yes, all this added up was like real weird. I was like, yeah, girl, you missed the red flags. But anywho, so kind of like, I just thought he was very sus. I was like, there's something going on with this guy, but like, I didn't think he'd be the demon prince though. Like, we kind of get mentions of like the demon realm or the demon kingdom or whatever you want to call it, but like not a lot of it. So I was kind of surprised, and I was like, okay. Especially because like there are a lot of like nefarious people in this book, so I wasn't sure like who the quote unquote big bad was going to be, and I'm still not even sure if it's going to be him and his family, or like what's going on with that. But no, I want to say like I was half seas on it. Like, I thought he was sus. There's something weird going on. I thought maybe he was in cahoots with somebody. I didn't know who the somebody was because you just don't really get a lot of that. I just wasn't like, oh yes, he's also a prince. Like, girl be picking them real good, right? Like Prince A and Prince B over here. Like, damn, girl. But yeah, didn't expect the whole demon aspect of him being there.
Barbara pretty much hit the nail on the head with this one. Yeah, I thought he was kind of suspicious for a lot of reasons, but definitely did not expect him to be that level of bad guy. So yeah, I mean the twist did surprise me. I had my suspicions that he was not everything he was cracked up to be, but not to that extent.
Samesies. I thought he was sus when he was being kind of like disappearing and dodgy. Definitely, there was no thought in my mind, oh, this is like a demon prince. No, I just thought, oh, this is a douchebag. Or like he's
Right.
gonna end up hurting her in one way or another. It wasn't like
Right.
it was like, oh, he's not being honest, or like he's where something's gonna come out that's gonna not end well. But I definitely like nowhere in my mind was like he's a demon prince. Like,
Yeah, I thought so because I was like, okay, I hate calling it a triangle because it's not a triangle. It's like a V technically.
It's an angle.
It's a V.
A love angle.
A love angle. And I was like, someone's going to have to do something that makes her not dislike them. And Leeway already did that in the sense that, like, he wouldn't marry her or, like, couldn't be with her type thing. So I was like, when she's got to do something, like, he's a little too, like, stab hungry. So I was like, I wonder if that's what I thought. Like, maybe he was going to, like, murder someone. Yeah, like, murder someone or attempt to murder Leeway is what I was thinking. Like, that kind of a thing. I wasn't like, Demon Prince, what?
Speaking of that, whose betrayal is worse, Li Wei's or Wen Shi's? And do you think Xingyin will ever be able to trust or love again? Clearly, Wen Shi's betrayal. I don't even consider what Li Wei did a betrayal, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But Wen Shi's was absolutely a betrayal. He straight up lied. Honestly, what Xingyin did to Li Wei was more of a betrayal than the other way around. But again, I'll get to that in a second. Wang Shi pretended to be somebody else with the intent of, doing evil things to try to take over and take down the Celestial Kingdom. Huge betrayal. Obviously, it's going to cause some trust issues. She was falling in love with this person who turns out to be not who they said they were. But as far as Li Wei, like he is a royal person, and in this culture and the society that they live in, he has no control over who he gets to marry, because marriage for them is not about love. It's about making a connection with another ruling power for diplomacy purposes, or alliance purposes, or staving off war purposes, or whatever it might be. But he doesn't get to pick. And so while that sucks that they were falling in love and that he can't, well, initially can't be with her, she should have known that comes with the territory. He's a prince. He doesn't get to pick. And so I don't think that's a betrayal. I think actually it's more of a betrayal what she did in keeping her true identity from him. In some ways, to a lesser extent, she did the same thing to him that Wang Shi did to her. She pretended to be somebody else. Didn't put the full extent of her identity out there on the table.
Not to the full extent, but yeah, I mean.
So as far as the last question, though, yes, I do think that she'll be able to trust or love fully again. I think that the end of the book pretty much sums up the fact that her and Li Wei are going to be together. But I think it's going to take some time to get over the trauma of betrayal from what Wang Shi did to her, though, for sure.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with Michael. Obviously, both of them hurt her in certain ways, but when it felt more personal. Like, obviously, he definitely had like all of these ill intents and motives behind what he was doing. I do think that he had genuine feelings for her, obviously, at some point, but that doesn't make up for the fact that like what he did. And I don't even know if like more personal is the right term that I'm looking for. I don't know, but I hope obviously that she is able to go to celestial therapy, just kidding, and find the ability to trust and love again, because she does have some trust issues, and this is just solidifying them. And yeah, I mean, I always liked her with Li Wei, but we have another question on that at the end, so I'll save that.
Yeah, definitely when she's for sure is the worst betrayal. He fully used her, I think, and accidentally fell in love with her in the process. Like, I think he had nefarious reasons to getting closer to her, and then was like, "Oh, dope, she's cool. Oops," type thing. I don't, I don't think he fully went in to be like, oh, I like her, and then he used her type thing. I think it was the other way
Like a
around. So
Tinder
I
one
think
night
that's
stand, and then it's like, oh, I actually like this person, but now I was a
it,
tool bag.
exactly. So I think that's why it's worse. Like he completely lied. Like there's no if and what's about it. He completely lied to her about pretty much everything. Whereas Leeway, like Michael mentioned, was just trying to put his people first because of his position. Like he does, like Michael said, he does not get a choice. Like he is a prince, and in their culture, he has to marry for political reasons. It has nothing to do with for love. And like, could he have pushed his parents a little bit more? Yeah, but like, have you met his parents? Like, I don't think they would have a problem murdering him, to be honest with you, because like, I think it's funny that he's a prince and he has to get married for political reasons, but like these bitches be living forever, so like realistically speaking, it's just like a maybe if something were to happen to his father, Leeway would step up, but like he's been ruling for like hundreds of thousands of years or something crazy amount of time like this, like he ain't going anywhere. I hope he will, but you know, as of right now, he's not. So it's just kind of weird to me. But like, okay, fine, I get it. Like Leeway is a little softer hearted, and so I don't think he like pushed his parents as much as maybe he could have, and maybe that was like why Xingyin was like, what the heck? But like, girl, like you knew what you were getting into. Like you knew he was the prince. You had no offense. Like you didn't really. You weren't even in line. Like, you know, so it was ill-fated to begin with. He kind of knew that. So I was a little pissed off at her that she was like, how dare you? I was like, well, I mean, he tried. But anywho, yes, I mean, as far as like, will she? Yeah, I think so. Like, for my sake, she better get over it because I want a happy ending.
All right, next question then. After learning more about the mind talent and its users and uses, why do you think the Celestial Emperor banned the practice and exiled the Cloud Wall realm, turning it into the Demon realm?
I feel like the mind control stuff is obviously a super dangerous power to have just in general. And it can be just like any other power used for evil or good. And so I kind of understand wanting it banned for like the ill intent weaponized usage, I guess, but to ban it entirely and in the way that happened, and then just like, I don't know, I feel like it was more out of like a fear of the unknown or a fear of, it was more fear based. So instead of like, oh, this is actually like a really cool power that people have, let's figure out how we can harness it and use it for something different. It's like, no, it's the devil realm or whatever, and like we're just gonna banish it entirely. I don't know if any of that made sense, but
Why did he do that? Because Emperor's a little bitch. No, I'm just kidding. But really, can you tell I'm not a fan? Anyways, I really do think he's an evil guy who's just looking out for number one, aka himself. But I digress. I think his intent was like he doesn't understand something or he can't control it. He deems it as bad or evil, like he did with the dragons, clearly, who literally have a rule of thumb like, hey, we're not about this lifestyle. We're not going to fight for you. We're not going to kill anyone. That's not how we are. And he's like, well, screw you, you're evil, you're banished. And it's like, meh, that's no. And so I feel like maybe we're not getting the full picture of the mind talent users because he did the same thing with them. Granted, yeah, like they're like Laura mentioned, like their powers can be used destructively, and even Xingyin mentioned it. She's like, yes, like all of our powers can be used badly, but like you're removing someone's body autonomy, like you're removing their free will and making them do stuff that they normally would not do outside of that, so that can cause more harm than that, you know. So it's not like, oh, I shot a firebolt or a ice arrow at you, like that she intentionally did that. That was an intentional thing. Whereas the other one, it's like you're making these people fight each other. So that's the issue there. But I think the problem is he literally created these quote unquote demons, these quote unquote bad guys, because he ostracized them and claimed their powers as bad. And you put them against a wall. And so what are they going to do? They're going to retaliate. So you made them use their powers like this. I'm very curious if the second book is going to like go into the background of these mind talents and the demon realm and how we got to this point and what actually happened, because I feel like we're not getting the full picture here about all of this, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, the mind talent is no more more or less dangerous than any of the other magic. The only reason it's banned and ostracized and demonized is because it's the only type of magic that the Emperor can't practice. And because it's the only type of magic he can't practice, it means he can't control it and he doesn't fully understand it, which is why he banned it. Same with the dragons. Same with everything else that he can't control. He's the Emperor. He likes to control things. Shocker. And so, yeah, I don't
Except
think
for
that
his wife.
well, yeah, because he's afraid of her and she might kill him. But I think that he did it because he is afraid of what he doesn't understand and what he can't control. And it's the only type of magic he can't use. So he's like, you know what? Get out of here. Don't want any of that crap in my empire. Is it the right decision? No, it's not. I mean, you can't just ostracize people you don't understand, but that's why he did it, because he is afraid of it at the end of the day. He can't counter it. He doesn't have any power against it. So he got rid of it.
I don't know that I would agree that it's not any more dangerous than other powers, though, because I feel like the mind control piece, literally, you're like taking away somebody's free will, or like causing them to act or like in a way that they otherwise can't control, versus like shooting fire arrows, right? Like that's badass, but there's like shields and there's, you don't have to have magical powers to necessarily like fend that off, whereas you would literally have to have the ability to close your mind however magically in order to, like, there is very little that you can do in defense of the mind control piece. Not that I think
the Emperor literally almost killed an immortal woman, Xingyin, with his lightning powers because he felt like it.
Watch your profanity.
Because he felt like it.
I'm not saying the Emperor is a good guy. I'm saying in the abstract, like if we take the Emperor out of it, I don't think that mind control is necessarily equal to some of the other like
it has more potential to be worse,
right,
than the other
I'm not saying in the ways that they used it was worse. I'm saying like in the abstract, like that to me
it's god tier.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the other ones, I mean, they're still, like you said, like lightning,
they're still bad.
like you're still bad, but like, yeah, I agree with Lauren that too.
Even at the end of the story, Xingyin's affections are still somewhat split between Wenxi and Li Wei. How did you feel about this ending? Did you know that there was a sequel? What do you think will happen? Will Xingyin choose Li Wei or Wenxi?
So I was fine with this ending since I did know I did know this was book 1 in a duology. I think she'll either choose Li Wei or choose herself. I don't think she'd ever choose Wenxi, but like who knows? I obviously didn't read I haven't read the second one, nor did I write it, so I don't know. But I'm leaning towards Li Wei or by herself. Like she don't need no man, but I have an inkling that it might be Li Wei because he was like the first. And I honestly, I think she only fell for Wenxi. I feel bad saying this, but I think she only fell for Wenxi because she thought she couldn't have Li Wei. Like, boy, you're playing second fiddle. Like, she chose you because she didn't have another option. Like, her first choice was going to be Li Wei, obviously. But like, there's a lot going on with that whole thing. So, who's to know? Maybe the second book will put in the third option. Like, we don't know, you know.
I'm gonna get on my soapbox for this one. I thought it was so stupid that at the end of the book that when she is even still like even a small candidate. Like what Barbara and I got into an argument about this.
We did get in an argument.
Like, and I will say, so my thoughts on this is there is a moment where Xingyin had an opportunity to end Wenxi, either herself or through his evil brother, and he dies. He's off the board. And she took the moral high ground and was like, no, he's still a person. We can't do that. And fine. What I like about the book and what I like what the author did is that the author made her confront that bad decision. Because she let him live, she got to see all of those people that are Celestials that were part of the army that she fought in and people that she knew die. And that sucks. It's the Batman dilemma. Like, Batman doesn't kill the Joker. Batman has to watch the Joker kill a bunch of innocent people. And that's what happened here. She could not bring herself to either kill him or let him die by other means. And that was the consequence. But the fact that, like, at the end, like, she's like, oh, I don't know. It's like, no, you know, he's evil. Like, you let him live, fine. That was a bad
You
decision.
don't know that though. You don't know if he's evil. I don't know.
He's a
Like
demon
Did
prince.
he put magic-resistant handcuffs on her and
yeah, okay.
kidnap her
Like,
against her
I'm not
will?
saying he's a great guy, but that doesn't mean you deserve to die. Like, what if she left him alive and now he's gonna take over the demon realm and they like work together in a good way? Because if not, he would be dead and his creepy rapey older brother would be the one, and he's like definition of evil
Well,
right there.
I don't
incarnate.
necessarily.
Let's ask the celestial soldier who just had a baby. Oh wait, we can't because he's dead. He was killed
Oh my
by
gosh,
Wen
you're
Shi.
doing too many what ifs.
I feel like, though, that what I heard Michael saying was, okay, she didn't let him die. She had to deal with the consequences. What I hear is the frustration, which is also mine, is that, like, why is he even still an option for you? Like, as
Yes.
somebody that you are interested in, I understand, like, not he doesn't necessarily need to die, but that also means that we don't need to sleep with him. Come on. Like,
I understand, but like, isn't that the whole great old question? Like, if it was so easy to fall out of love with people, wouldn't everyone do it? Like, we've all been there. We've all been young and impressionable and fallen in love with crappy people.
but does it
like,
end well, Barbara? Does it end well?
No, it never does. But like, that's how you grow as a human and figure out, like, you know what? Maybe the bad boy isn't for me. And some of
And
us
again,
don't learn
that's
that.
I know,
valid.
and that's why I give her the benefit of like that. You know, I understand why she couldn't kill him and why she couldn't let his brother kill him. I'm just saying I like that the author made her confront that decision and say, because I couldn't do this and I couldn't let this happen, this is the consequence.
Yeah. I feel like it's very human of her, of these choices and stuff. Because like, if you look at your life, you'd be like, we've made some crap decision because of who we chosen to love. And I'm not even saying like relationship, like even platonically, you could have a crappy friend or any of this stuff, you know? And it's like, it's not so easy to just snap your fingers and be like, I choose to not like you anymore. Like, unfortunately, that's not how that works.
Well,
you know, like,
you can have feelings for somebody and not act on them because they've shown you who they are, which I feel like.
Well, she hasn't acted on it. Like, after she figured out he was.
No, but like what Michael's
crazy
saying
demon
is,
prince.
like, if she chooses to like have him as an option, that would be acting on something when he's already shown her who he is.
What if he has like a whole what is it called, redemption arc? Like, what if he like, I have a feeling that's gonna be what happens, and maybe he like dies trying to save her type thing, you know? I don't know. I have a lot of things going on in my mind what could happen.
You would have to have a hell of a redemption arc story for it to be valid to me, but that's just my opinion.
Oh, I love me some redemption arc, so I'm for it. Like,
I'm all for him having a redemption arc. I don't think that there's any level of redemption arc that should cause her to be like, oh my God, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I've always loved you. I don't care that you kidnapped me and did all these horrible things.
Right. Hey, Michael, some people are just masochists.
Come on.
I only knew that there's a sequel to this because we had discussed it before starting the book, that like it was a duology and those are not super common. I just basically already said my piece on the rest of it. I don't know who she will choose. I hope it's Leeway. She has more of a natural chemistry with him. He's actually a good person at his core, I feel like, morally. But I also just kind of hope she stays single and like has a do me attitude for a while after all of the betrayal she went through and all the trauma shit that she endured. But if she's going to end up with one of them, it should be Leeway. And if she so chooses differently, I have a feeling it would definitely be for the plot. for the plot in the book, because, you know, obviously that's going to make more drama storytelling wise if she chooses the baddie. But yeah, I kind of already spoke to that.
All right, now, last question. Why do you think Xingyin chose to free the dragons instead of using them or binding their power to others? How is she able to honor the dragon's wishes and still fulfill the Celestial Emperor's task? And how would the novel have changed if she had made a different decision? As far as the first question, I think she chose to free the dragons because the dragons are about as neutral of a character and party that you can have. They are not evil. They are not good. They are neutral. They don't intend to harm other people. In fact, they want to help. And I think she saw that. She also learned that if she allowed someone to control them and force them to do bad things, they were going to die. That would destroy them. So I think that is why she let them free. I think that was the right choice. They did not deserve to be bound to anybody. And so that's the first question. How is she able to honor the dragon's wishes? Because the Celestial Emperor was being a deceitful little bitch and not telling her what the pearls were, just that he wanted the pearls. So because he just said he wanted the pearls, he did not imply he needed the dragon's life essences in the pearls, just wanted the pearls. So she was able to return the essences to the dragons, and at great physical cost to herself, and still fulfill her agreement by giving the Emperor these now very beautiful but very much useless pearls. And the novel would have been dramatically different if she'd made a different decision. If she had chosen to allow Wen Shi to keep the dragons, then God knows what would have happened to the Celestial Empire. If she had chosen to give the dragons to the Celestial Emperor, God knows what would have happened to the rest of the world. If she had chosen to keep the dragon's power for herself, that would have been an interesting second book. Like, we'd have this character where, like, Xinyan's like this good person learning about the world, and then she becomes an authoritarian dictator through the power of the dragons.
I mean, that would be an interesting book.
That's what I'm saying. That's really what I just said. I would read that. But I mean, it would have been a totally different ending, totally different future if she didn't do what she did. And I'm sure the dragons will come back in book 2. They made it pretty clear that they gave her a means to contact them, so the odds of that happening are quite high. But yeah, that's my answer for those 3 questions.
Yeah, I overall agree with what you said. I feel like she wasn't going to go against what they'd already been. Gosh, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not enslaved, not ostracized. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to. My brain's not braining. Anyway, the dragons had already like been through enough as far as being kind of pushed out or misunderstood, I guess. And so I don't think that she would use them in a bad way for that reason, because she's not a shit. And then, yeah, Michael answered most of the others. I think he also had a lot of good twists on if she would have made a different decision, what that could have looked like. But yeah, the dragons better come back also. P.S. Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons.
I would be so disappointed if they don't. I want more dragons in the last book. Anywho, I think she realized what their powers in the wrong hands could do, like both with the demon kind and with the emperor. Like, she clearly saw both of them were power hungry, and she's like, nah, son, not about that life. So, plus, she saw that people would not heed their choices and make them fight, which was going literally against their nature and would kill them in the process. And I think throughout the book, she did a lot of growth as far as like she realized what not being so like narrow-minded and being so like me could do, you know. Like, she started to realize, oh, like my actions actually have consequences outside of just me. And she saw that when she's like, yeah, I'll take your pearl powers, and she's like, oh crap, like me, if I would have just been like, nah, I'm not taking it, they would have just flown away, then no one, you know, would have grabbed him type thing, and we wouldn't be in this situation. But as far as like how does she honor that, by literally using his own tactics and wording against him, like serves him right. The emperor was gonna be a sleazeball and be like, I just want the pearls, and she's like, well bitch, I just gave you the pearls, and he acted like a complete and utter douche nugget about it. Like, she literally did the same thing he did, and he's like, I'm gonna murder you for it. I was like, your true colors are showing, my guy. Like, hello, you did the same shiz to her, she's doing it back to you, and you're pissed off that she did the same thing.
Well,
and she gets
he doesn't want to be
for
bamboozled, Barbara.
Can you tell I am not a fan? I am not a fan of this man.
Really? I thought he was your favorite character. That was the vibe.
He is not. If we're gonna talk about favorite evil characters, mine is the flower queen. Go off, queen. I'm a little sad that she died too soon. R.I.P. Anyways, I think if she would have done something differently, we would have had an overpowered emperor at our hands and an evil human. As far as with the demon side, it would have been the same thing. It would have been like war, although I have a feeling this might still end up with that, but we'll see. Let's see. I have a feeling that, yeah, well, I've already talked about my dislike about the emperor, but I digress.
Really? Have you? I think I must have missed that.
Any opportunity I'm gonna do or I'm gonna talk shits about him.
I guess I must have missed that.
You must have. Good thing you can re-listen to this.
It's true. Well, we've made it to the end of another podcast. Let's talk about our individual scores for this book. Barbara, what was yours?
Yes, I gave it an 8.75 for reasons of I wanted more of an ensemble cast of characters. I really liked some of the other characters and I wish we got more of them. I wasn't a huge fan of like in your face similes. I feel like it kind of tapered down. It wasn't as much. It still was there, but not as much later on throughout the book. The pacing was good. I enjoyed the pacing. The characters were all really amazing. Obviously, the world building, the magic, the dragons. We need more dragons. So yeah, that's
Dragons.
Dragons.
My score for this one was an 8.5 out of 10, a reasonable decimal, only 1 over, not 2. But I digress.
Deaf ears.
It was a good book. I really liked it. I think it deserves that high score. I am excited to, and I hope we get a chance to read the second one on the podcast.
I am the only one that did not do a decimal.
Do you want a cookie?
And you get a
I
gold
do.
star.
You can mail me a gluten-free cookie. I gave it an 8. Originally, I gave it a 7, but then the further I reflected, I felt I was being harsh. I did enjoy it. I think that this is one. The reason that I increased my score was because I actually would probably read the second one. And usually with these types of books that I'm made to read on the podcast, I have no real true interest in finishing a series, just depending on how much I liked it. So, but I think I would read this.
So our group score for this one was an 8.416 repeating out of 10. Make sure you're following Badass Literature for free in your favorite podcast app. Give us a rating and leave us a review if they allow you to. Also, please don't forget to follow us on social media. Our username is @BadassLitPod on both Instagram and Facebook.
Have feedback about today's episode? You can contact us by writing to badassliteraturesociety@gmail.com. You can also send us a DM or leave a comment on Instagram or Facebook.
As always, thank you so much for listening. See you next time. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, and if you didn't catch it, Barbara hates the Emperor.
Yes. No, he's her favorite.
Death to the Emperor.
Sorry. I keep getting confused. She wasn't very clear. So.
I thought he was her favorite.